I'm Dr. Rachel Sue, and you're listening to the Squawk Global Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Squawk Global. This week, we're really excited to have Dr. Rachel Sue on our show today. She's an exotic vet out in Dallas, Texas, and we're really excited to have her on the show today to talk about sexual hormones in birds and all about advocacy and rescuing parrots and giving parrots a forever home and knowing what goes into it when you have a parrot. Dr. Rachel, welcome to Squawk Global.
Hi, thanks for having me. I am a veterinarian in Dallas, Texas. I love working with exotic pets. I primarily work with exotics. I do see some dogs and cats too. I've loved exotic pets ever since I was a kid. I've had birds and reptiles and small furry mammals. They're just my passion. I have a social media where I educate people on exotic pet ownership and husbandry and pet medicine. It's called exotic.pet.vet. You can find me on all the social media channels. I'm really excited to share about exotic pet medicine, especially our parrots.
We are so excited to have you on.
We have a lot of different guests that have come on to our show, and I think it's important when we have exotic vets that we get to talk about real problems that we face with our parrots from a medical landscape better than our average owner. Even though some owners have been experienced for many, many years, it doesn't mean that they're always experts when it comes to this stuff because they might not be up to date with current changes or educated in new ways. So this is the goal of this podcast, is to help even experienced parrot owners understand new things that they might not know. One of the biggest things that I wanted to talk about on this particular episode today was definitely hormones, because we're going into hormone season. I know that with Gizmo. Gizmo's been acting a little nippy or hormonal lately. And it's one of the reasons for parrot rehoming. Would you say that might be a linkage to a lot of the parrots that get rehomed is because of hormonal behaviors?
Oh, 100%. And I mean, hormonal behaviors and just natural bird behaviors. A lot of people fall in love with the baby birds they see at the pet store because they're sweet, they're cuddly, they don't have any of those behaviors. You know, they don't typically bite. They're not typically super loud when they're babies, unless you're like feeding them. But people find them super cute when they're young. And then as they mature, they start showing these behaviors that we as humans deem undesirable, even though they're natural behaviors for the bird. And if that includes screaming or biting, then owners get frustrated or scared of their own bird, and that's when they end up rehomed.
And what age would you say that the hormones kick in with a bird?
It's different for each species. For some smaller birds, it can be a year. For some larger birds, it could be a couple years, if not some more. There's definitely species variation with that.
And we have the experience of both areas because when we first got into birds, we had zero experience. We were that couple that walked into
what you just said.
Yeah.
Oh, cute little bird.
Walked into a pet store like, oh my gosh, look how beautiful she is, because she's a Gen conure, so obviously she's very bright colored and stunning. And of course we were like, oh wow, how cool would it be to have this tropical bird in our home? Not knowing anything, did zero research. The pet store did no education, zero education. I think they actually almost refrained from it because they want to make a sale. But we went home, got her, awesome, loving, so cute. Hormones kicked in, and now she's a raging little demon in there. And she still is. I just constantly get bit. We love each other. We're very bonded, but at the same time, it comes with the hormonal aggression that she happens to have all the time with me. And she's totally sweet and then takes a chunk out of my neck. And she's 5 now. At first, she was just this little perfect, sweet angel. And then that happened. And I think that's at the point where most people then start saying, this is not what I signed up for. And
I do. I'm like, it's a good job I love you. It is a good job I love you because it is hard. Hormones are so hard.
Yeah, I'm definitely not one to judge. My family went through the same thing when I was a kid. We went into a pet store and I got a cockatiel when I was maybe in like 4th grade. We didn't do any research. We just trusted the pet store that sold it to us. You know, that cockatiel was on the improper diet its entire life. We had the same thing happen where it loved me when it was a baby. And then as it got a little bit older and got more sexually mature, it bonded to my father and didn't tolerate anyone else in the family. It happened to me. And so I don't judge at all. And it's just something I want to educate others on going forward because I didn't know any different until I went to vet school and learned for myself. So I don't expect owners to know something I didn't personally know as a new owner.
Exactly. There's zero judgment on this podcast for anybody that's listening and being like, I did the same thing. Zero judgment, because we're just scratching the surface on parrot education, parrot awareness, and advocacy. Even though many decades people have had birds, but now there needs to be more awareness and education. If we can just help one person make a conscious decision, and those that already have them be able to be better parrot owners because of the information from these episodes. When it comes to hormones, what are some of the signs that we know that our bird is hormonal? What are some of the things that we can look for?
There's some more obvious and less obvious things you can look for, especially in females. Obvious signs are egg laying. Hopefully you don't want it to get to that point, though. Sometimes you can see them doing their little mating dance. They'll move a certain way. Sometimes they'll lean over and shake a little bit. I don't want to imitate it for you, but there's lots of videos online that you can look up for the female hormonal receptive behavior, especially in like cockatoos or African greys. Sometimes they'll pant a little bit, and that's them telling you like they view you as their mate and they're ready. But we don't want to get to that point. For males, sometimes they can be more aggressive or nippy around that time, more protective of their mate if they view someone in the family as their mate. There's so many factors that go into it.
We experienced that with our conure. She gets on our shoulder right here. And then at first she'll be cuddly, and then all of a sudden she's basically backing up her vent into our neck and trying to rub it. And
she cover her wing with our face.
Yeah, she's just like...
She does a little sexy dance with her neck.
Oh.
So true. And then she starts making a specific sound.
Yeah, sometimes they make little sounds.
Yeah. But what's interesting is with her, I think she's a little bit of a floozy because it doesn't matter who you are. You can even be a stranger. Some of our friends she's never met. She's like, oh yeah, I'll come onto your shoulder. And then I'm like, girl, like you just met him, you know, or her.
I've seen some cockatoos that are so hormonal and so desperate for that type of contact that they literally get off on us just doing our exam and holding them. And it's the craziest thing. It's like, stop, I'm doing an exam on you. Don't act that way. They're just so hormonal and I guess sexually suppressed. It's a weird thing to think of our bird companions as having sexual tendencies when, you know, we spay and neuter our dogs and we rarely ever see that aside from the random dog that likes to hump or whatever. We took a wild animal and put them in captivity, and we shouldn't expect their nature to completely change because we have them here. They haven't been domesticated quite the same way as dogs and cats, if even.
Exactly. I think once humans reach a certain age, that sexual tendency just floods our brains and our minds because it's just part of who we are. And the same thing with them. Why should we expect any less? Unfortunately, as parrot owners, we have to understand it very much because it can cause a lot of issues. Exactly.
And I was going to ask about egg laying because I know each species are different. What would generally be the age that they would start? Does it vary?
Yeah, it definitely varies by the species. Some it's like a year, some it's a couple years. There's also been many reports of birds not laying their first egg until they're 30 years old. You know, I can count a few times I know pet owners that have thought they had a male bird and then 30 years go by and then suddenly their bird lays an egg and they're like, you had no idea. You can have a bird not lay an egg at all its entire life and be female, and you can have a bird start laying just a year or two old, and depending on the species.
Because we're lucky, she's a very horny girl, and we've never got to the stage where she's nested or tried to lay an egg. Try and separate her when she starts getting like that, but seems to be constantly like, yes, we were worried about that.
And we're very mindful about light. We cover her for at least 12 hours so she doesn't have exposure to the light, because I know that's a common thing that can trigger hormones, correct?
Yes, for a lot of species, that does play a big role as far as light stimulation, making them think it's the season for breeding.
And you mentioned a good point about some people don't know the sex of their parrot. Some species of birds you can tell by just what they look like. But for a Agende conure, they look the same, and same with an African gray. So we got both of them DNA tested, even though Gizmo was a rescue and they told us he was male. They never had any documentation that claimed that he was a male. So we wanted to make sure we got them both DNA tests. When we first got our conure, we just went with the boy name straight away for a whole year. And then DNA tests Well, yeah, her name's Bird, so never mind. We just called Bird male pronouns, I should say, for a year. And then after we got DNA tested, we were like, oh, never
I have
mind.
a little girl. We're like, what? That was so hard to change.
Yeah, that was. Now she's my little princess, so it's easy. With dogs, with cats, clearly there is indication of male and female. And my question is, for a male, where are their parts? They're obviously inside them, but how does that function and work? Could you tell me a little more about that?
Their testicles are actually inside of their abdomen or their belly. It's actually called a coelom because they don't really have a diaphragm like you or me, but their testicles sit right underneath their spine or in the center of their belly, and they can actually grow in size if it's hormonal season, especially certain species. This is about parrots, but ducks in particular. Their testicles can grow huge when it's the breeding season.
Wow.
In fact, some veterinarians have misidentified them on x-rays as a tumor because of how big they are and how much space they take up.
Wow.
So they really undergo some big changes during breeding season and under hormonal stimulation, something that we don't necessarily see on the outside in some species. I had something similar happen with my own bird as far as not knowing the sex. I got him as a rescue, but the owners didn't have any documentation. They said they thought it was a male. I went ahead and did a DNA test and it said female. And I said, oh my gosh, this is a complete shock to me. But then, I noticed he was a little bit big for a female. I was like, oh, maybe I'll just do it one more time. I have had wrong tests happen before. Next test came back male.
Whoa.
Well, what would I do now? So then I sent off a third test from a completely different lab, and that one came back as male. Tests can be wrong. I've had it happen where the test says male, and then 5 years later they lay an egg. So I love testing, but it's not a perfect test. No test is perfect. That was definitely a shock for me, and we had to change his pronouns back and forth so many times. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting. That makes me want to retest Bird just to do another check because we got her test not done by a veterinarian, but by actually there's a
send a feather out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you never know. That'd be so funny if she ended up being a male all along from the start, and she was like, "See, told you." But
that's why we've never had eggs.
Yeah. Okay, their testicles are in there, and then they can grow because they get bigger. Could they gain some weight from that then?
I would say it depends on the species.
Okay.
I can't comment for every species. They're a little bit different.
Okay. And what about their penis to be able to mate with a female? That is also inside too?
Oh, it depends on the species as well, actually. Ducks have a phallus that they can copulate with. They don't pee out of it, so it's purely for copulation. But they're the exception. Most birds don't have a phallus.
Really?
And they mate via a cloacal kiss. They just have one hole.
Yep.
Male and females have a hole. We call it the vent. And the cloaca is the receptacle where pee, poop, and reproductive fluids pass through. And when a male and a female parrot mate, they just put their little vents together and fluids pass through, and that's how they get it done. Most species don't have a phallus. Ducks are the exception. And maybe some others.
Oh, wow.
I did not know that.
No.
I thought it was just come out when it had to.
Yeah.
Retracted when it didn't need to.
Yeah.
And don't look up duck penises because they actually are pretty scary. They
want to do that.
They have a corkscrew appearance to them because there was a sexual arms race between female ducks and male ducks. Some ducks mate by forced copulation, and they hold the female down and force themselves upon the female. And the females evolved a twisted vagina with different dead ends and blind cavities to help prevent that from happening when being mated when they didn't want that. And so the females have a corkscrew vault one way, and the male ducks have a phallus that corkscrews the other way. And when they mate, they fit together like a lock and key. And it's very interesting. Evolutionary adaptation.
That is. We've got a lake near us and we go for a walk around it. And when it's breeding season with ducks, you do see that poor female duck, and then it's 15 males just trying to get to her. We're like, go away.
But it's interesting how they've adapted that way. Mother Nature definitely has some crazy adaptations.
Yeah.
And trigger warning, I probably will put an image up for people, but I'll warn them ahead of time.
I've done a video on it as well where I had a picture up, so feel free.
It's interesting. As humans, we're very curious, and I think it's very good and educational for people to learn these different things because I just learned something new. I thought Gizmo had phallus. Now I'm going to talk to him about that. I mean, we do talk about his little ballies, and we always say that. We're like, your little ballies are inside. We know, like, we always joke like that. I'll have to joke with him about that now because it's fun.
Yeah, I used to have tortoises, and I got told, don't look up pictures. And then I did, and I was disgusted. And then I realized I actually had a male, and I saw it firsthand, and that was scarring.
What species was this?
A tortoise.
Oh yeah, they're kind of freaky too. Yeah.
Do not look that up.
And then going back to some hormonal behaviors, because this is another thing Gizmo will do is he'll regurgitate sometimes.
It's not just for me. He will regurgitate over his food, which he loves. So we were like, is that hormonal or is that just him loving his food?
You know, in my experience, I try to discourage the regurgitation because it is usually a hormonal sign. Now, we need to make sure they're not vomiting or rule out other possible causes. But usually if they're doing the dance that goes along with it and you see them like, you know, regurgitating to you, then it's a sign of hormonal behavior. And my own bird did this when I first got him. Even though he's pretty young, I guess the previous owner didn't really discourage it as much, or maybe they did, and it's just something that he developed. Now, he's gotten better. When I first got him, he was regurgitating to me all the time, but now if he tries to do it, I immediately just put him back. Don't give him any attention. I don't grab the regurgitation because some owners, they think it's cute. And you see on Parrot forums online, they're like, oh, he's just showing you that he loves you. You know, you should take the present or whatever. And I'm like, no, don't encourage this. Even if you have a male and you're not worried about egg binding, it's still not healthy to have them view you as a mate. We want platonic relationships with our parrot companions.
Exactly. So with Gizmo, when he first started, he would start regurgitating, and you can see it all coming up. But he's one for that. He has intention to regurgitate for me, but then he just wants to eat it again. But then I would put him back. But he does it with food too. So if he has a snack or something that he really enjoys, and he's on his own, he's not even by me, he'll start regurgitating that. He gets to the point where it comes up in his mouth and then he'll eat it again and then he'll do it again.
He bites his leg.
Thigh.
Yeah, his like leg. He gives it a couple bites and then gets him going.
Do we let him just do that?
I would try to remove him from the situation that is exacerbating the behavior. If he does it, you know, when you have him out in a certain area or when you're hanging out with him and doing certain things, I would just try to immediately put him back, give him no attention at all when that is going on. They may realize that, oh, if I do that, I don't get any attention, but then they will, over time, minimize that behavior. You might not ever get rid of it completely, but small steps that we can take to help. There's some food textures that can actually increase the risk of hormonal behavior and regurgitation.
Oh, really?
So when we feed our parrots softer, mushy food, that can mimic us feeding them regurgitation, and then they'll take that as a signal that we're regurgitating to them and we're seeing them as a mate. So sometimes not only is there a dietary trigger as far as the food item that you're feeding, but also a texture thing.
That's it.
That makes so much sense. Because it will be like a bit of scrambled eggs, or occasionally I have a couple of bites of mashed potato.
That means it's that soft food then that when he eats it, he's like, oh, yeah, okay. That actually makes sense. That's probably the answer there. So that's really good point. So obviously if that's a trigger for him, because if it's not those types of soft food, he will not do it at all.
Yeah, sometimes it's their diet. For many species, if they're having a high fat, high caloric, intense diet, they are like, oh, I have a lot of resources right now. This is a perfect time to make some babies kind of thing. So diet, whether it's texture or what it's made out of, can certainly play a role in hormonal behavior.
Right.
Interesting. Preventative care is really important in owning a parrot. And so I would love to talk about what does preventative care look like to you? And if somebody wants to give the best quality life to a parrot, what do you recommend for vet visits and things like that?
So I'm glad you asked. So one of the most important factors in making sure you're taking care of your bird appropriately and giving them the best chance at living a happy, healthy life is just having the correct diet. A lot of people are misinformed on that. And myself included, when I was a first bird owner, when I was little, my family just trusted the pet store when we got our family cockatiel when I was little, and they told us to feed it seeds, and we just did. We didn't do any extra research, and we didn't bring our cockatiel to a vet. This was 20 years ago, but it really can have a huge impact on their health. And most people don't realize that seeds are not an appropriate diet for a bird. They are super high in fat and low in certain vitamins, such as vitamin A. And for a lot of species, it is just like feeding them McDonald's every day. A small amount in moderation for training purposes is fine, but it should not be the bulk of their diet for most species. Some species can tolerate more than others. In fact, cockatiels and budgies certainly need more seed in their diet than the average parrot, but for a larger parrots such as macaws or African greys, Amazons, they really should not be having that much seed in their diet. There's great pelleted formulations available: Harrison's, Rowdy Bush, Lefebvre, Zupreme. I certainly like a well-rounded pellet for birds in addition to fresh fruit, veggies, grains. There's certainly species variation. They should have fresh, healthy foods in addition to a pelleted diet and just having seeds or nuts as treats.
And also with preventative care, what I've understood, especially since we talked to another vet recently, and she mentioned that a parrot is a prey animal, so they can not show signs and symptoms as much as a human or other animals can show that they're not feeling well. Parrots can really hide it. Would you say that an annual blood test or a blood test at least at some point in their life is valuable?
Oh, 100%. Another big thing that people don't realize is that there's veterinarians for birds, and in some areas you may have to travel a bit, but it is so important for their health. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I've had an owner bring me a bird for a wellness visit, just an annual checkup, just want to make sure my bird is healthy. And I do my exam and I find out that the bird is emaciated, it's starving, or there's something else going entirely wrong inside. And the owner had no idea, because birds are hardwired to not show any signs of illness until they really can't compensate anymore. If they were in the wild and they were weak or not flying as well or not eating as well or looking like they were unhealthy, they would be picked off by predators. They'd be an easy target. And that hasn't changed even though we brought them into captivity. They really do hide signs of illness well until basically they're actively dying and can't hide it anymore. And it's not the bird owner's fault for not realizing it, because they're so good at hiding it. We're trained as veterinarians to pick up on these small cues and do a thorough physical exam and look at them in all the right places to make sure they're not thin or that they don't have issues in their mouth or their lungs or their heart. If we catch these things early, we're able to treat them. But sometimes it's too late if we don't bring them in until they're really, really sick.
Exactly.
And how often do you recommend seeing an exotic vet? Because I know there's a lot of people that buy birds that don't realize that they do need a specialist vet. So how often would you say that they need to come in and bring their birds?
For most birds, I recommend a yearly vet visit. If it's an older bird or a bird with issues, sometimes we say twice a year, or even more frequently if we're monitoring a certain condition.
Yeah. We've always been open to doing blood work because of the fact that I know that that's one of the only indications to see if there's anything wrong. Our vet has done a check and she's like, he looks great. From what I can see, he looks perfectly healthy, but let's go ahead and do a blood test. And for some people, they might think, oh my gosh, that's so invasive and scary. And from my experience, I was in the room, got to see him do the first blood test, and it was really quick and easy. He tolerated that well. In fact, his beak trim and nail trims was more scary for him than the blood test that we did.
That's not uncommon. A lot of owners are scared to bring their birds in because they don't want to stress out their bird or scared for the blood draw. But a lot of times birds tolerate it really well, even better than like a nail trim or a beak trim. If they're not tolerating it well, we certainly have a lot of options. I have sent home oral medications like gabapentin just to de-stress a bird before a vet visit. It's a mild anxiety medication for them. It can also have some pain relieving properties to it. For other birds, we do actually use stronger sedative medications. A lot of times people choose midazolam and butorphanol. It can make them a lot more compliant for the exam and de-stresses them. But it also has kind of an amnestic effect to it where they don't really remember being stressed out. So over time, they can build up a better tolerance for vet visits because they don't view it as such a bad thing. And if they're not in pain or they're not stressed, it's a much more pleasant experience for them. A lot of people are afraid of the word sedation because in the past, people have lost birds from anesthesia, but drugs have come a long way over the years, and I sedate birds all the time, every single day. And if it's mild sedation, it is super, super safe, especially in an experienced avian vet's hands. I sedated my own bird for x-rays and blood work and a nail trim, and just because I want the best for him. And it's not something that we should be afraid of if we need to use a little bit of it for some diagnostics. Now, in a super unhealthy bird, maybe we take extra precautions. But again, we still shouldn't say no to these treatment modalities because we're scared, because sometimes not doing them is actually more dangerous. Stressing a bird out can certainly be more dangerous to me, in my opinion, or not getting the answers that we need will prevent us from accurately treating a patient. It's certainly something that I'm passionate about, is giving them the standard of care that they deserve.
That actually helped relieve some of my fears, because that is scary. You think about them and they're your babies.
And sedation is different than anesthesia too. They're not completely under it. A lot of times with mild sedation, they're still moving around a little bit. They're just much more compliant. I mean, it depends on what level your veterinarian uses. In an experienced avian vet's hands, it's generally very well tolerated and a safe treatment.
Yeah,
I forgot to touch back on your yearly blood work thing. Yearly blood work is super important for birds because you're right. They often don't show us signs of being unhealthy, especially if it's mild or early on in a disease. And even doing a physical exam might not reveal everything. A lot of times I see high cholesterol or triglycerides or the beginning of liver disease or kidney disease on blood work that I wouldn't have been able to find just by doing a physical exam alone.
I know some people have fears for their own pets in a sense, but at the same time, it is really vital. If you want to give the best quality care, it's important. It's just like us. We need to know where our health levels are. And then if you have that baseline testing, then if you go get another one and they can see different changes, that's when they can catch things early. Because we want to have our birds live long, healthy lives. And that's definitely a part of parrot care.
I've worked at zoos before where we're working with some really endangered, rare, expensive animal species. And before they ship, animal off to another zoo or location, they do blood work and x-rays and sedate them and all these things. And they wouldn't be doing that if it was that risky or not necessary for their overall health. I know people are scared because you hear so many things online, but medicine has come a long way over the past decade or two when maybe it was more dangerous in the past.
And I just wanted to switch topics. Obviously, we did a lot of education today on hormones because it's really important for parrot owners to know what you're getting into as well. And we're really advocates for rescuing, because right now in the world with rise of social media, we all make content. Yours is definitely more educational. Ours is very entertainment. And because of entertainment content that's going out about parrots, we see a major rise with people wanting parrots. We have a responsibility now to share this stuff and be able to educate people. So with that being said, we wanted to talk about rescues because after getting bird, we realized we really wanted to rescue, researching, and realize there's so many. Yours is a rescue as well, right?
This is Boomy back here, and he is a rescue as well.
How old was he when you got him?
He was only 2 years old, and the owner actually surrendered him because the owner developed health problems and wasn't able to take care of him anymore. So I took him in, and he's about 3 now. He's a blue-throated macaw. We've definitely worked on a couple things. He was eating a primarily seed-based diet when I got him, and we had to do the whole transition to pellets and healthy, fresh foods. He did have some bad habits that we had to break, like him rushing up onto your shoulder or head and biting a little bit. We've slowly been training that and replacing with more positive behaviors. I certainly advocate for rescue birds because there's so many out there that need homes and that aren't getting the attention or love they deserve. And don't be afraid to invest in the time or having patience with training and rehabilitating them or giving them a proper diet or husbandry or any of that. It's definitely been rewarding. I wouldn't have changed it. There's always something that we can work on and improve. And it's been such a positive and rewarding experience to see how far he's come over such a short period of time.
I love that. And the differences between cats, dogs is parrots live a long time. I think some people have in their mindset, oh, there's a rescue parrot that is cute and it's 19. I won't have much time with that pet. That's not the case, typically.
In fact, it's sometimes better to get an older bird because then you don't have to worry about what happens when you pass away, or they've already reached that point of sexual maturity where you know what you're getting when you get the bird versus getting a baby and then realizing they turn into a monster in a couple years. There's certainly pros of adopting an older bird and being able to help care for it and give it what it needs. I'm not completely against breeders because I have worked with some that are actually doing a lot of good work. They're working with endangered species and preserving really rare species of birds, and they work with zoos. But there are a lot of unethical breeders out there too. I personally just saw a patient, an owner brought this bird to me, and they said it was 3 or 4 years old. They had just got it from the breeder a week ago, and they noticed it just wasn't acting right. It wasn't moving around much. It wasn't very active. It was not eating great and sitting weird. His toes were messed up. And they brought it in just for a wellness checkup because they were getting worried about the bird. And I walked through the door and immediately could tell this was not a young bird. It had cataracts, which typically in a macaw, this was a scarlet macaw, wouldn't develop until maybe 25, 30 years of age. It was super arthritic and its toes were all broken and deformed, and it was emaciated, like skin and bones. It was just not healthy at the slightest. And the fact that a breeder shipped this bird from Florida and then we live in Texas, and one, glad that it didn't die during transit. The fact that they pawned off this bird that was likely a retired breeder to an unsuspecting owner who thought they were getting a young, healthy bird just broke my heart. And the fact that this bird was basically just used its entire life to produce more babies and then thrown away once it's past its prime, I was so upset for the owner, so upset for the bird. It was really hard to see. And it was actually the sweetest bird too. I did my exam and it ate out of my hand after. It didn't even care that I just stressed it out a little bit with an exam. There are some very unethical breeders out there. So we need to make sure that we're not supporting projects like that that take advantage of birds for profit.
We've rescued a few birds now, and Blue was one that we actually fell in love with and wanted to keep. He was an Indian ringneck, and we got him. And because he was 7, and she was selling him for a really high price.
Yeah.
And we spoke, but she wasn't going to back down. And then we found out that he'd been used as a breeding bird, caged, and that his actual mate had died
of egg binding.
Egg binding. She said that she can't bond him with anyone else, so she had no use for him. That's when we took him. He was messed up for a long time, but he's doing amazing now.
We helped rehabilitate him and rehome him because it didn't fit in with our flock, unfortunately. But it was really sad because it was her words. She said clear as day, I have no use for him if he's not going to breed. Crazy fact too, when we picked him up, he was in the back seat of her car that was filled with kittens because not only was she just unethically breeding parrots, but also breeding cats. And she was like, do you want to buy one? Want to buy a kitten? I'm like, no.
Oh my God.
I told her, would you be down to go on price? Because I think it was $1,800 for a 7-year-old Indian ringneck. But she was like, no, firm on price. But we decided to do it because we wanted to get him out of that situation and go into a home that was not forced to breed. And he didn't have to live in a cage and stay in there to be a breeding bird. Wanted to give him a better life. And now he's flourishing. He has a forever home with a lady who he gets to go to work with her. He gets to hang out, and he's such a sweetie. We get to hear updates from her from time to time, and we're really glad that he's doing really well now and out of that situation.
Unfortunately, there's unethical breeders with every species, dogs, cats, birds, reptiles, and it's up to us as pet owners to educate ourselves on what to look for, because people do take advantage of animals, unfortunately. There's so much reward that comes with rehabilitating and rescuing a bird and just seeing the progress that they can make. They're so smart. They're so intelligent and personable, and it's amazing what you can see happen with just a little bit of love and care.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Definitely. Okay.
We like to end our podcast with some rapid fire questions.
One thing every bird owner should remove from their home.
I have to pick just one. Teflon is a big one because I've unfortunately seen Teflon pans kill an entire flock that an owner has in their home. All it takes is one instance of overheating the pan and the fumes being released, and it can kill every bird in the household. That's a big one. There are so many other dangers out there. So,
biggest hormonal trigger in parrots.
I would say the biggest one is just the inappropriate relationships that people have with their bird and unknowingly stimulating them or masturbating them. People don't realize if you pet your bird along the back or in other areas that are more like erotic for them, you're stimulating them and telling the bird, I'm your mate. So I always tell owners, just pet them from the neck up. And it can be hard for owners to stop because I've literally seen owners in the exam room, like petting their bird like this, stroking it on its back while I've just told them that they need to stop because it's creating this loop of increasing the hormones and causing the bird to be egg bound, and they're just not getting better. The owners think it's cute. They're cuddling their bird. They're making them feel nice, and it's just not the right way to do it. So only pet your bird from the neck up.
What's the minimum sleep for birds?
Usually we recommend at least 10 to 12 hours of complete darkness if we're trying to limit the stimulation for them to be reproductively active. Sometimes it can go up even more, though.
Most common diet mistake in parrots.
Just overfeeding seeds, thinking that is a balanced, nutritious diet, when in reality, for most species, it's basically like feeding McDonald's, and they won't eat their veggies or their pellets or their fresh foods if they're being overfed seeds.
One cute behavior that's actually a red flag in a bird.
A lot of people find regurgitation cute. They think that their bird is giving them a present. In reality, we should be trying to stop that behavior as much as possible. When they do their little hormonal sexy dance, some of the birds will ask to be cuddled or stroked. We'll find it cute because it's a pleasing experience for most owners to pet an animal, whether that's a cat or a dog or a bird. So we find it endearing when we can pet them along their back, but that's actually the wrong place to do it. We don't want to be stroking them on their back because if you think about it, when birds mate, there's a female under the male and the male is, on top like this, and it's touching their back, and that's one thing that can stimulate them. No stroking them along their back, even if we find it cute, because it can stimulate them.
Most common reason a parrot shows up to a vet too late.
There's quite a few reasons why they might turn up too late. Sometimes they're egg bound and we're trying to retroactively fix the hormonal behavior or take out the egg. Sometimes they're in heart failure where they have fluid buildup in their body and their heart isn't working well or their liver isn't working well, and we drain the fluid and put them on medication or try to find out the underlying cause. A lot of times birds show up to the vet when diseases have progressed pretty far, and it makes treatment much more challenging.
I see a lot online with respiratory distress or some things in the home as well. And by that point, if you don't get them to a vet straight away, they can pass away.
Yeah. And sometimes it's really sad and it's just from trauma or an injury, and owners think, oh, she just hurt her toe in a cage. Let's wait a couple days and see if it gets better. But I've actually seen birds show up and they have broken legs, and the owners don't realize it because birds are so good at hiding signs of pain, and they've been walking on a broken foot or a broken leg for 3 days. And it's just really sad because they're such strong creatures and stoic creatures that it hurts them because owners don't know that it's as serious as it is.
Is there any toy that you hate seeing?
Any toy can have this, but sometimes the little carabiners or the clips that are used to hold or attach the toy to the cage can be super dangerous. I've seen multiple times where a bird actually undoes the clip and they're chewing on it and it gets caught in their mouth and actually punctures right through their face. I've seen birds die because of that. On multiple occasions, owners will come home and the bird's hanging from the cage by the hook. I'm super careful when it comes to toys in my own bird's cage. I actually use padlocks that completely shut. There's no possible way he can open it up. Not only because I have a macaw and he will open up anything, but even for smaller species, nothing that can become undone or unraveled that they can potentially puncture themselves with. Also, any toy that can be ingested is dangerous, especially if it's made with toxic materials. Lead and zinc poisoning is something that we see every now and then in parrots because they ingest the toy, and it can cause serious illness, if not death, in birds.
It's important that you get toys from a good, reputable source because like on Amazon or Temu is really trying to push parrot toys. And I've seen some of those and they are not good quality by any means.
Cheap toys are made and sold on Amazon or from sketchy stores. And it's hard because toys are expensive. They go through toys so quickly because they're meant to be destructed and tear apart things, but the cost adds up. But in fact, some of those more cost-effective options are unsafe or have toxic materials or break apart in a way that they can eat it or ingest it or cause issues down the road. And it'll actually be more expensive later on.
Wing clipping is a 50-50 argument with parrot owners. What are your thoughts on that?
I try to talk every owner out of wing clipping as much as possible. I don't think it is completely black and white. There might be some gray areas, but in my experience, I definitely try to keep all birds intact. Wing clipping has been shown to cause a lot of issues, such as behavioral problems, the inability to fly. It's just so detrimental because birds were meant to be able to fly miles and miles a day out in the wild, and it's so good for their mental health and physical health. A lot of birds suffer from atherosclerosis because they live the sedentary lifestyle and they're just not able to exercise like they should. Taking away one of the few ways that they can exercise is not ideal and very bad in my opinion. And it's also bad for their mental health. They enjoy flight. They benefit from being able to express that natural behavior. And also it could be dangerous. If they're frightened and they're not able to get away from something, not only is that mentally unwell for them, but physically. I've seen birds get attacked by the family dog or the family cat because they weren't able to fly away. So many reasons to not clip your bird's wings and allow them the gift of flight.
One myth about parrots that you wish could be deleted from the internet.
I wish pet owners were less afraid of veterinary care for their birds. I've had bird owners tell me they didn't even want to go to the vet because they thought the stress of bringing them away from home would be enough to kill them. I think these rumors happen because people don't bring their parrots to the vet until they are seriously ill. And then when they die at the vet, they blame it on the vet. But in fact, it was due to underlying disease that they just didn't know about. So veterinary care is certainly an option and should be done for every parrot, and we shouldn't shy away from that because we're afraid of the danger or the stress of an exam or the risks of sedation, because in an experienced veterinarian's hands and with mild sedation, it's generally very well tolerated and not risky. We shouldn't say no to life-saving procedures because we're worried about surgery or anesthesia. Yes, there can be risks, but there's generally more risks to not doing it if your vet is recommending that your bird have it.
That's a great
I personally
answer
wouldn't
on
recommend
that.
something I wouldn't do for my own bird.
Definitely. And I think that's so important. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Of course.
We've covered
a lot. Yeah.
so many important,
I'm happy to get this information out there. I literally educate people on birds for a living, and so it's something I'm very passionate about and love to talk about.
We thank you so much for your time because we know that time is valuable. So we appreciate you being on the Squawk Global Podcast. We really appreciate it. Maybe we could have you back in the future too for other topics as we evolve, because we do believe that this show will start reaching a lot more people. Speaking of reaching people, please tell us exactly where we can find you, because she has an online presence as well where you can find more content. So tell us where we can find you.
Yes, you can find me at exotic.pet.vet on Instagram and TikTok, and Dr. Rachel Exotic Pet Vet on Facebook and YouTube.
That's awesome. I'll have
there was one more thing. This is probably a better answer to the question about what I wish people would realize.
Yeah.
It kind of plays more into this. I wish people realize that everything you see online about the cute, intelligent, well-mannered birds, funny birds that you see online isn't everything that you get with a bird. Yes, they are certainly endearing and lovable and intelligent and fun, but there's so much more. I do have some negative attributes as well that most people don't realize before getting a pet bird. They live a very long time and they're a huge commitment. And if you purchase or rescue a bird with the intent on having it learn some phrases and be funny and cuddly, you are setting yourself up for disappointment. They are messy. They have adapted to making a mess in the wild because they spread or disperse seeds while they eat. And they chew on everything outside, and putting them in captivity, they're going to still make a mess. You can't unhardwire that from their brain. They make a mess. That's normal. They make a lot of noise. They are meant to scream out to their companions in the wild, and their voices carry over miles because that's what they were meant to do, to reach out to their flock. It's normal for them to scream, especially to their flock mates, which they view as you in captivity. So they make a mess, they're loud, they can bite. That's all normal, natural behavior that we have to accept as bird owners. And if you're not willing to accept that, then you shouldn't get a bird, because there's so much more that other than just funny, silly videos and talking and cuddling that you see online.
Exactly.
So that might be a better thing than just the other answer I had.
It's perfect.
No, that was perfect.
It's true. And the bird poo. They poo a lot.
They poo.
Yes, so much bird poop. They make a mess.
We'll leave the house and we do a poo check all the time because I can't see my back very well. So Emily will be like, you can't go out with that shirt. I'm like, oh, okay, hold on. Let me go change.
They poop so much. They're meant to poop all the time because it makes them lighter so that they can fly. So they shouldn't hold on to their poop. They're messy animals. There's no making them any less messy.
Our house is super tidy, but every once in a while people will come over and they're like, ew, is that a bird poo? I'm like, yeah. Like, we have birds. Like, I don't, sorry, I missed that spot to us. It's fine. We just flick it off.
Yep.
But it is what it is.
It was a big learning curve or an adjustment for my husband, who did not grow up with birds. So
I love that he's supportive though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for watching Squawk Global. And again, thank you, Dr. Rachel, for being on the show. For everyone listening, Dr. Rachel C's information will be in the show notes or in the description. You'll find links to watch all her content online. And we'll be having a lot more awareness, advocacy, and educational talks going forward. Be on the lookout for the next episode, and we'll see you then.
See you then.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
I'm Dr. Rachel Sue, and you're listening to the Squawk Global Podcast.